Question number 10, David Shearer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister of Science and Technology, Minister of Science and Innovation now. Does he agree with Professor Sir Paul Callaghan's statement on science and innovation? Quote, "It's clear that the Minister of Finance and Prime Minister are not really seeing this as a top priority."
The Honourable Dr Wayne Mapp.
Mr. Speaker, no. The Prime Minister himself said in a statement to Parliament earlier this year, over time we've prioritised science and innovation as a target for increased investment, which is why over 3 years we've lifted vote science and innovation from 689 million to 773 million this year. And on top of that, of course, we have 190 million in the Primary Growth Partnership to help farmers, not penalise them. Can I also say I was somewhat surprised that the member didn't use the full quote from the Radio Live interview.
Order. Normally a minister, of course, can put a quote into context, but it should be done a rather different way than that. And I think we've heard sufficient on that. David Shearer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary.
How can he say that they view science
Point
as
of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Sorry, Mr. Part of the problem here is that I think some members... I know that it was an egregious breach of your rules about speaking, but unfortunately some of the members heard and some of them didn't. And we understand that it was an amusing quote.
I appreciate the member's attempt to bring some humour to the situation, but I think the House has seen a little bit of humour in it anyhow. David Shearer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How can he say that they view science as a top priority when Vote Science and Innovation recorded a $14 million drop in funding between 2011-12 and 2010-11?
The Honourable Dr Wayne Mapp.
Mr. Speaker, as the member actually knows, the vote actually has two parts to it, capital and operating, and last year's had a $16 million capital grant to REANZ. Of course, that was expended last year, not repeated this year, so the operating vote actually went up, as it indeed does in subsequent years.
David Shearer.
Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does he agree with the Prime Minister's statement in May last year that investment in science, quote, will not only keep New Zealand competitive, but is at the heart of our strategy to boost economic growth? If so, does the drop in funding this year mean that science is no longer considered part of that strategy?
The Honourable Dr Wayne Mapp.
Mr. Speaker, no, I do not agree with that proposition because there was no drop. And can I also say that there is statistics indicating that manufacturing has climbed to its highest level in nearly a year, and that comes from a BNZ Business New Zealand survey released today.
David Shearer.
Yeah. What does he say to the 60% of companies, many of them leading-edge innovative companies, that applied for his technology transfer grant but have been refused, and why are they not a priority for funding?
The Honourable Dr Wayne Mapp.
Mr. Speaker, the technology development grant actually ramps up 22 million last year, 45 this year, 60 next year.
Very good.
David Shearer.
Given that the government has chosen to fund other areas, such as customs and veteran affairs this year, and not science and innovation, has he simply failed to make the case for science and innovation to the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance?
The Honourable Dr Wayne Mapp.
Well, Mr. Speaker, each of the years the appropriation actually increases in the operating appropriations.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Pete Hodgson.
Lead up to the May 2011 budget, how much extra money did the Minister of Science and Innovation ask for in that portfolio?
The Honourable Dr Wayne Mapp.
Mr. Speaker, obviously there's always discussions. One of the issues here, of course, is the high-value manufacturing review, which is not yet released, and the government will be considering its response to that soon enough. Of course, there's a budget next year.
Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker, we are getting fairly close to the end of question time in our supplementary, sir, and rather than us have to use another supplementary to get an answer about how much the Minister asked for, about how much the Minister asked for, could I ask you to ask him to answer the question that was put to him?
Order. The member's point is reasonably well made. I mean, the answer didn't really, the question was pretty simple. It asked a question that the Minister presumably must know the answer to, is how much money he asked for in the budget process. Now, he may argue it's not in the public interest to reveal that, but he should attempt to answer the question, in my view. The Honourable Dr. Wayne Mapp.
Well, referring to the answer, Mr Speaker, it's my understanding that discussion...
Is this a point of order, not an answer?
Well, I suppose there is a point of order, in fact.
I'll
Mr.
hear
Speaker.
a point of order then from the Minister, the Honourable Dr. Wayne Mapp.
To the previous point of order, it's my understanding that discussions between ministers relating to budget are matters that are kept confidential.
Well,
That's point of order, Mr. Speaker.
well, I'll hear briefly for the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Why then do the Minister's papers to the Treasury get released under the Official Information Act?
Order, we're now getting into debate rather than points of order. And it's my fault that I accept the blame for that. But it's an interesting little issue that a reasonable question was asked. You know, how much money, funding, did a minister seek in their portfolio? Now, it may be that this information is public knowledge and through release of papers, and ministers may feel perfectly happy to answer it. It may be that that information is considered confidential, and a minister may say it's not in the public interest to answer it. And either of those are answers. All I'm asking is that the question be answered and not some other question answered. So that's what I'm asking. The Honourable Dr. Wayne Mapp.
Well, Mr Speaker, yes, there were discussions between ministers, as the documents indicate. It was considered the issues relating to the high-value manufacturing review were not mature yet. And thus that was a matter left over to 2012. That would have required an increased appropriation over 4 years and of approximately $100 million.
Well, I don't think I need to. We don't need to. What I'll do is invite the Honourable Pete Hodgson to repeat his question. It appeared it may not have been heard. The Honourable Pete Hodgson.
In the lead-up to the May 2011 budget, how much money did the Minister of Science and Innovation ask for his portfolio?
The Honourable Dr. Wayne Mapp.
Yes. As my colleagues have pointed out to me, Mr Speaker, more than I got. As I said, the issue was over the high-value manufacturing review, which was a request over 4 years in the region of $100 million.
Point of order, the Honourable Pete Hodgson.
Mr Speaker, we are all trying to coach the Minister, sir, and I think I would suggest to you that the answers are, I can't remember, it's not in the public interest, or X number of dollars.
Order. I've given the member. I think we've given the member opportunity to pursue this question. I think the House should move on now. Question number 11. Supplementary question, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Speaker, was the centre to which he referred, the decision on which has been deferred to the next budget, the only item that was not funded that he requested in this budget?
The Honourable Dr. Wayne Mapp.
Mr Speaker, that was the principal item. There were some other issues as well.
Question number... Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
I refuted the answer. That was the principal item. There was some other issues as well. Is that an answer to that question?
Well, I believe it. Order. I don't think we should take more time on this. I've given the opposition a lot of opportunity to question the minister. I think I've been pretty reasonable on it, and that was an answer. I mean, what the minister indicated, that the main difference between the funding received and the funding sought was that particular item that he mentioned. And I think that's a pretty reasonable answer. Admittedly, he hasn't given exact dollar figures, but I still think it's a reasonable answer to the question asked. Question number 11, Chester Borrows.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the